Mayor Goodman.
I am here.
President Hinds.
I'm here.
Vice President Cox.
Hello, here.
Councilmember Martin.
Present.
Councilmember Riccio, she's going to be late. Councilmember Jones.
Here.
City Manager Sue Beaudet.
Here.
Attorney Kiersten Ballou, absent. Finance Director Stephen Bloom should be online. City Clerk Latricia Wright, I am here, and all other staff.
Present.
Item number 1, we'll have the opening prayer and pledge of allegiance by Mayor Charles Goodman.
Lord, we come to you tonight to do the very important business for us, to keep our city as prosperous as we can and to overcome all the obstacles put in our way. Lord, we ask you for the wisdom that is necessary for us to do the best that we can for our citizens. Lord, we just thank you so much for this day. And Lord, we ask you to bless this meeting and to be with each and every person as they go home and place a hedge of protection around each of them and let them safely return to their home. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
We're going to continue with item number 2, presentation by Finance Director Stephen Bloom.
Hang on a second, Stephen. All right, go ahead. We're going to turn it up a little. Go ahead.
You hear me okay?
Try it again.
Good evening.
We got you.
Okay. First, I want to apologize for not being able to be there in person. Can you, again, just want to make sure you guys can hear me before I get started.
Yeah, we got you. Go ahead.
Okay. So this evening is the first of what is scheduled to be. We have actually 3 workshops, so this is one of 3 that we have on the calendar if all 3 are needed. Today, as we kind of go through this and look at the goals, which is the next slide there, I'm going to do the normal presentation that is very top level, provides a very grand overview of all of the numbers that are in your budget, kind of presents it a little bit for you, tries to give a lot of context tonight into what the staff and everyone has put together for you, and kind of what the assumptions are. It's a big part of this is making sure you understand how these numbers were generated and not just what they are. And then obviously, plenty of time for discussion and feedback. The one thing that we do have to get done tonight, and this is very similar to each of the first workshops that we do, is that we have to come to a consensus on the millage rate and the first public hearing. And again, just a reminder on the millage rate and how this works. We establish the preliminary millage rate tonight. That is the rate that will go into the trim notices that are sent out to the residents and every parcel owner as you know, again, this year, obviously, one new aspect would be if you approve the assessment roll, by the way, then the fire assessment would also be on that trim notices. So both of those items would be put on the trim, and then from there, you still have your additional workshops, and then ultimately you would have in September 2 public hearings. Now, in terms of the millage rates, and again, it's probably a reminder for most of you, whatever we set tonight becomes the maximum amount, because that's what you're going to notice. The council can lower the millage rate after tonight at, discussions during workshops, and even during the, you'll get the 2 public hearings. You get a tentative one and then a final one of sorts to lower the millage rate. But after tonight, whatever is set, I will actually tomorrow go into the e-trim system and lock in the maximum amount, as well as put in the first public hearing date. And then, part of the reason why that is, again, it goes into the trim notice, which means that the city does not have to advertise for that first public hearing. So again, that's really the only item today that you kind of have to walk out here with. But other than that, like I said, there's still plenty of time to lower the millage rate or discuss the millage rate and any of the other items that are in your budget. It is the first, like I said, of 3. And so with that, let me kind of kick off and go to the next slide, and you can see your calendar. So we have penciled in, and again, it's penciled in until kind of tonight, all of the key dates for you. And again, obviously today's first one. The next tentatively scheduled workshop is August 12th. And then we have another one at the end of August, on August 26th, again, if needed. Your first public hearing, again, if approved tonight, would be September 12th. And that's moved up a little bit because we have the added extra steps of an assessment roll this year for the fire assessment. So that adds a little bit more in terms of the mechanics of getting that assessment roll. It has to actually be done by that 12th, I think, is what they established. And then the second one is on September 26th, which is a little bit more of a standard date that we go with. Just for those of you who might not have a calendar in front of you, the 12th is actually a Friday, and then the 26th, I'm too far here. 26 should be it. I guess 26. See what I have as a 26. That was a Tuesday. But anyway, so basically, I mean, that's kind of, yeah, the 26th is actually the 26th is a Friday, so that one might be one that you might entertain. I left it at 2 weeks out from the first one, but if you preferred, you could actually do that on the 23rd, which is a Tuesday, or any time. I think the real critical one that we always need to set, obviously, is the trim one. Is that one you really can't, once you set that out and you go out for it, you're kind of locked in. But the second one can be discussed, as well as any of these other dates. But I like to do, when I put this slide up, I just like to kind of lay it out, especially for anyone who might be new to the process, as well as the fact, obviously, we only do this once a year, so it's not like this is a regular routine. So it's always good to kind of know where things are going to end up with the different steps. But again, the only one that we'll have to lock in is the first public hearing. In terms of the budget book, I've kind of in the next slide, I put kind of a very top level outline for those of you who might not be familiar with the setup. It's very similar to what we've done in the past. We've got a summary schedule, a pretty detailed staffing plan, as well as kind of even before that, I do a year-over-year analysis of the positions. I've got some information in there on property taxes, and I will have some slides here. And then it goes right into kind of the meat of the budget for each of the funds. That's kind of the largest section. And then in the back end, I have a breakdown on the departments that are allocated. Yes.
Hey, this is Darfeness. You can't hear me?
Yes, I hear you fine. Go ahead.
Oh.
I can hear you.
Do you want to discuss the dates or now or after you do your whole entire presentation?
That's up to the council. If you prefer to address it now while everybody's fresh, then absolutely. That if everyone wants to kind of lock that in, that'd be great. I have no problems with that. That'll be 1 out of 2 steps done.
Okay. We'll let you go ahead and finish, and then we'll discuss dates. Maybe Ms. Riccio will be here by then.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. So I think the last piece I wanted to mention on the outline is there are several departments that over the years we've combined and put into the general fund. And this is worth mentioning again. It's a repeat. City manager, city clerk, HR, purchasing, and IT. What we decided in previous years was instead of everyone having to go, okay, I need to go to this fund and add up this amount and this fund and add up this amount, we put them all in the general fund and get one consolidated cost that you can look at. But the budget does then allocate those departments out to the airport gets a piece of some of them, and the utility fund does. So in the back of the book, I show you a consolidated look at that with the breakdown by fund. And then I also provide you a look at your capital plan, which again, that one is definitely still evolving as we work through the budget process. There's still quite a bit. Staff is kind of, moving together, and then there is actually an updated 5-year plan that I'll have for the next workshop. So that's kind of a look at your budget book. Now, if we go to the next slide, which is slide 5 on there, let's talk about kind of an overview. And again, very top level, certainly plenty of time to go into the details, but certainly wanted to make sure I provided the broad strokes at the very minimum. Again, your budget's being operating, debt service, capital, and then transfers, which we'll talk quite a bit about the transfers and reserves. The process in general is very similar to what we've done in the past. We've started with the staff, having them provide their feedback on either changes, increases, decreases, new programs, and then from there, there were several meetings to try and kind of get this budget to obviously be able to present and maybe kind of adjust it a little bit. Overall, what you have in front of you right now, again, very big picture. The new budget, the one for next year, is about 0.8% higher than your current year's budget. Now, kind of at full disclosure, when you look and you take out the capital, and I say when you take out or exclude capital, it's because the airport from year to year has a lot of capital swings, so it makes it a little bit harder to see citywide. But when you do exclude capital, the increase is about 9.1% compared to your current year. And again, there's a couple more charts here to provide some more feedback on that. Next slide. In terms of your staffing plan, there's a net 4 new positions. And I always use the word net because during the course of a year since the last budget, certain positions are either moved around, they could be, renamed, retitled, go into a different department. At the end of the day, this budget's got a net of 4. 2 of those are the fiber technicians. That'll be obviously dedicated to your new fiber services. Besides those two, you've got a new administrative assistant in utilities and a new water technician in the utilities. That should be, by the way, 2026 wages. The 2026 wages, everything that you have in front of you across the board has a 3% wage increase. And when you look at the staffing plan, I even actually put in a column this year to show you the percentage. Everybody across the board, regardless, got that 3%. The only difference being the police officers have an additional 3%. It's not in the staffing plan. It was put in a separate line item under the police department called payroll adjustments, and I'm sure the chief could speak to that, but that's the only exception to that rule. And so those are the amounts that you have. Again, that's in your budget right now. If you did nothing else, that's what the amount would be. The general pension actually went down, as well as the police pension. Again, per the actuarial studies. So you can see the general that's right in there right now is 4.86, and the police pension is 4.92. FRS, which is solely for your fire department, actually increased from 32.67 up to a little bit under 3 basis points, 35.19. Like we do early on in the budget process every year, we have contingencies built in. We will not know what the premiums will be, although we got some estimates until later in the year. But we have them built in there right now, 15 for health and life. We did get kind of an informal quote on the workers' comp at 25%, cyber and GL at 5%, and then auto at 25%. So again, those are built into your budgets right now. All of the budgets are balanced except for the utility fund, and I do have a subsequent slide to kind of walk you through how we would bridge the gap. Let's see, and then the next slide, which is slide 7, has some more. We were able to, again, preliminary version, first time you're kind of going through this, we were able to decrease the transfer amount from the utility fund to the general fund in this version. And I'll kind of go through how we did that a little bit. So the current year is about 1.54 million is coming out of the utility fund just as a sole, support to the general fund. We were able to drop that down in this version of 1.515. So not a whole lot, but we do have, we have some other plans to try and get that even down a little bit lower. Like we talked about last year, and we talked about reserves, this budget has no use of cash reserves. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about that, if not maybe too much. The budget has about $540,000 for new loans. It's all coming from police and fire out of the general fund. And there would be principal and interest that's built in to cover that for those loans. Talk about the shared cost pages. Airport, the fuel sales, I have a very conservative 1% increase. And then next up, the millage rate. So the millage rate that's in your book, in your budget right now, is 7.00, which would be 0.25% higher than your current year. And again, got some slides on that. Talked about this when the audit was presented last year. We talked about it during the workshop. You're going to hear it again when the auditor presents your 2024. The cash reserves are not enough. Now, what we built into the budget you have in front of you is to start having a separate, complete line that can't be touched, not a contingency, completely separate. 100,000 for the general fund, and this version has 300,000 for the utility fund. So let me touch on this again because I put in this second line item to make sure I was super clear. what they call the standards. Again, these are the broad governmental standards. They like for you to have about 25%, one full quarter of your expenses as a reserve. So that's what I calculated on here. General fund would be 1.5. Utility fund would be 2 million. We're nowhere near that. And so the auditors have recommended, we talked about this before, to really start making sure at this point that every budget cycle, every year, we build that reserve back up a little bit. It's not going to get done overnight. It's not intended to get done overnight. But if every year we are going in the positive direction, then we'll be in good shape. What you'll hear when we talk about the audit is in 2024, we had about $100,000 in unanticipated hurricane expenses that haven't been reimbursed. So that type of stuff, you got to have these reserves to cover this type of stuff. Luckily, we did at the time, and we want to keep building that up because even if you get reimbursed, a lot of these grants and programs, you have to have the money in there up front. You're not going to get the money in the next day. Fortunately, sometimes you won't get the money in the next year. So again, there's plenty of reasons why you have to have cash reserves. This budget starts to adjust that so that moving forward, every year at the minimum, you will see these amounts. And then over time, the cash reserves will move slowly towards the 25%. So it would take a while. I don't know if 25% is needed for everything, but we kind of set that as a standard. Special assessments, the fire revenue is included in this budget. The net amount after discounts and costs, that's in your right. I think it's either the fourth or fifth line right in your general fund is $217,000 a little bit. Also included in your budget in this version is traffic enforcement fines of $100,000. We're super conservative in this first version. Again, we've got some more to talk about that as I go on, but this number's got about $100,000 in here. I've got a 3.0% increase in utility rates. Most of these are already kind of built in to what has been approved. And I think most of the increases are actually 2.7%. And then I put a little bit more of an increase in revenue to cover growth, but maybe 0.3, very little. Try to be as conservative as possible. However, we'll talk about this a little bit more. Rates, in order to fund the budget the way it is, would have to go up. Also, something different for us this coming year or 2026, solid waste contract will go up with the CPI of about 3.5%. So in order for the city to recover and not actually lose money in solid waste, our solid waste rates would actually have to go up too. And that's built into the budget you have in mind. With all that being said, here's a look at the numbers on slide 8 by the different categories. And you can see the capital outlay year over year has actually gone down, by 1.9 million. And again, projects change, especially at the airport. And the airport projects are all funded by grants, so that's why I normally, when I talk about this, I also give you a number without capital. Debt service is going up. We talked about loans. Also, you will eventually have a interest-only payment on the fiber loan that's included in here. And then operating expenses would be going up by 1.3. That part, a lot of that money, that additional expense, though, is tied into adjustments to your electric purchases. So electric revenue is going up. Piece of why it's going up is because the cost of electricity is going up, and that's really tied to fuel. And so when we look at the budget, you'll note there's a pretty significant jump. Now, most of that, if not all of it, is fully recovered in the power cost adjustment rates for electricity. But again, it is a year-over-year number increase. And then personal services, again, that covers new positions, That's going to cover, workers' comp increase. It's going to cover the net on the pension/FRS change, as well as the 3% would all be included in that line. Okay, so moving to the next slide. Again, literally this gives you a little bit more color for Ursula, and you can see that what we have tried to do this year is provide a little bit of a breakdown on each of the funds so you can see where everything's coming from. The big thing that just kind of sticks out on this first slide, obviously, is a lot of the money is coming from the contribution from other funds, whether it's the allocation of the departments, or again, we talked about the 1.5 from the utility fund. That's about 30% of the general fund's revenue, just with that. The next highest number is your ad valorem at 20%. So obviously, we've talked about this before, the concept of what the utility department is funding in the general fund in terms of both the dollar amount and the different services. Without that transfer, the general fund would have a large, obviously, deficit that would have to be filled some way. Again, the ad valorem, the next one after the ad valorem, which is again your property taxes, is a 13%. The other levied taxes, which again, fuel tax, sales tax, all of those other ones that actually come, will get funded back through the state and the county programs. That one's at 13%. Okay, so that's the revenue side in the general fund. Now, if you look at the next pie chart, that talks about the spending for it. And again, most of the services and that we always talk about this. You've got police at 36%, fires at 22%, and then none of the other departments really are in double digits after that. So public safety is an important and big part of the general fund.
Can I ask a question? Where is
Okay.
the utility department in the expenditures?
The utility, I have slides coming up for that. That was just the general fund. I have an airport slide. I have CRA, and then the utility, the big one.
Thank you. Sorry.
So in terms of the airport, and these I've kind of combined moving forward because if you go to the next slide. You can see grants and capital, both sides, the green match up there. Again, your grants on the airport, the airport manager's always done an exceptional job of developing that airport and doing it with grants. After that, fuel sales make up 34% of the revenue. So that's between those two. That's really most of it. So the rentals are still a growing program, but it's only at 9%. On the spending side, again, capital is the big item, and then obviously your operating costs and the airport is the fuel purchases. Other than that, the costs are a lot less percentage-wise. I mean, personnel is only 7% of the total cost at the airport. So if we take a look at the CRAs up next. Most of that, about 27% again. CRA is also projects, obviously. It's the core reason for it. The purpose of the CRA is to develop. There's a bank loan that was already approved. That's going to fund the large project, Block 12. It's still included in your budget. We have a portion of it in this year, but in terms of the timing, it was included in next year just to make sure that there's any carryover. Really, the tax revenue that's coming from the county and the city donates, puts some money in there as well. It's about 27%. Really, there is no next when it comes to this in terms of CRA's revenue. And then when you look at the spending side, again, you take out the capital debt, because there is the loan it's $1 million loan that has not been drawn on, by the way, yet. But once it does, this budget is already set up to pay the principal and interest payments. Okay, so the next up is the let's see, this includes this utility fund. Yep. So when you look at the utility fund, and again, there's nothing new on here per se. Obviously, electric services is both the largest percentage of revenue as well as the largest percentage of expenses. 51% of the revenue that you have budgeted here is coming from electric services. Sewer would be the next largest amount at 18, then water at 14, and so forth. And again, you can see the water and sewer spending lines up very closely to the revenue. And again, the city has worked very hard to try and get each one of these services to stand on their own. And happy to report sewer is doing that in this budget. Water's a little bit behind and after the transfer, but before the transfer, water would be doing a very solid job. Solid waste, again, wanted to try and keep solid waste as a break-even point. I think gas is the one service that we really, staff is really trying to work on to continue to get that one closer to make headway. And I think they've got some solid plans for moving forward for gas, but that's the one or the one remaining of sorts that's really trailing the progress of the other services. These charts kind of show you that. You look at the percentages, and then again, the left side is what's coming in, and the right side is what's going out. And obviously, you want the left side to be higher than the right, even if that's simple. Did you have any questions on this particular one? I call off the utilities, or just wanted to make sure I had one?
No, sorry, that was my mistake. I just misread the title of the chart.
Oh, no problem, no problem. So next, there is some significant projects. If you go to the next slide, that will be occurring. None of this is per se new. We've had the communication radio consoles on, I think, the last 2 other budgets. So this would be year 3. I know that the chief is working hard on that one. The brush 72 truck would be a new loan. They both would be new loans, but the brush 72 is the new item for this budget. The squirt truck is just a reminder that that's already on order, and I keep carrying it forward because that will eventually, be a part. Obviously have to be paid out. The valve exercise equipment is on this version of the budget, but they actually took that out for the next version at $45,000, so that one will not be in there moving forward. Airport, again, these are continuation of projects. I think they actually have maybe 1 or 2 other fully funded by grants that they might be putting in. The CRA, every dollar that's in the CRA fund is anticipated to be part of a project. So again, I put the full amount. Don't believe that they will get $1.6 million spent next year. But when you budget for this, that's the intent of the CRA. That's what they expect. There's no, developing reserves. There's no buildup that's supposed to be in the CRA fund. Eventually, the CRA fund would sunset. All the money is anticipated to be spent. And then I included the what is estimated to be back end of the fiber project for whatever that would not be completed, in the next month. Now, basically, the next 2 months. Okay, so I know that's been a lot, but I do have a couple more to get through. Next up is your kind of couple slides on the millage rate. This is a slide that I do every year. Tells you, and you can see the bar on the chart, the bar graph part of it is the taxable value. Again, taxable value is what's used to actually generate the property tax. The red line is your millage, and if you notice, this is the first year that this line is going to be going up in 5 years. It's been the same 6.5 from, I think that's, 2021, 2022, 2023, 24, 2024, 25. So it's, that's 1, 2, 3. So for 4 years, it's been 6.75. We have it going up to 7 again. Certainly, discussion points. The reasoning for this is kind of really the cost of everything has gone up in that time period, as well as kind of, unfortunately, the over-reliance on the transfer. Also, in this time period, we have new programs. The animal shelter is now a part of your operating budget, obviously, full-time. This, as well as the fact that the other tax revenue that we talked about has not gone up significantly to kind of cover some of the other costs. So built in to your budget right now, again, is the 7.00 mils. That would be about $217,000. That's already in your budget to cover costs. So if we look at the next chart, I always include options, just again for talking points here. The 7.0 again is 217,000. You can see here really kind of going every 0.50 of millage rates. It's about 50,000. If you go from 7 to 7.25, it goes from about 217 to 265. So it's a little bit under 50,000, and so forth and so on. I've shown in here 7.5 and then 7.75. The rollback rate, and again, we always talk about the rollback rate as part of what we have to actually announce at our public hearings. It's 6.3784, and you can see, what a huge difference going back to the rollback rate is. It would be tremendously tough on the general fund to go anywhere, even close to that. But again, we can always make sure we show that. The next chart, again, this is kind of a comparison between the different millage rates and what they mean on a property that's got an assessment value of $100,000. So 6.75. In other words, the difference between 6.75 and 7 mils is an annual cost of $12.50. Again, on the assessed value of $100,000. Obviously, if the more goes up, the more that is. So the next slide actually looks at that, and you can see. Make sure you guys are with me on here. Slide. Make sure you guys are on slide. This is slide 18. So this shows you every $100,000 of additional assessed value, what the cost would be. So if you had a parcel that had a $200,000 assessed value and you had your homestead exemptions, your bill would be $1,000.50, which is a $700 increase over the rate we talked about before. So in the prior chart, it was $350 for $100,000. So this is showing at $200,000 is $1,050. And then from there, you can see every 100,000 is another $700 of property taxes. Just wanted to show you, give you a little bit of an idea of an impact on what this particular millage rate would have. Okay, so that's been an awful lot. I promise you, I only have a couple more brief ones. The city staff, after we got this budget prepared for you, wanted to make sure we addressed the deficit that you're currently looking at in the utility fund. So on the next slide, we have the proposed adjustments to get rid of that gap. And again, we've got the grant. So we do not have any grant revenue in the general fund, but the chief says that for that he'll have another 30,000. He'll have 30,000 in grant revenue for next year. We also propose going from a super conservative 100,000 to 200, so we would increase that by another 100,000, and then we would offset those two increases by reducing the transfer to the utility fund by 125,000. So I believe right now in your current version we're reducing it by 25,000. That once this goes in place, the total reduction, it's not super amount, but at least it's showing progress, would actually be 150,000 reduction. And so that 125,000 then would be going against the 400,000 deficit. And then in addition to that, we have talked briefly about the solid waste, which would have to go up. They would eliminate their valve exercise equipment request. That's 45,000. And then we literally went line by line in each of the departments, any place that we could trim or push off for a year or combine or anything we could do to bridge the gap. We were able to get the last 150 out so that we would be able to balance every budget within the city, including the utility fund. As you have your discussions, this is a slide that I have in here every year. The only difference is in some years I used to put use of cash reserves, and now I'm not doing that anymore. There is no more cash reserves to be using to fund anything else. Anything else that needs to be funded at this point would have to be from increasing whatever millage rate that you have in there, changing the transfer, which again, not a lot of these are recommended, at least the first two, and then changing your service levels, either one way or the other. If you wanted to increase one department, you would have to reduce another department. And kind of on the utility fund, there were already built-in planned rate increases, so I'm not sure that would be a further recommendation until you get something from a rate study, but that is certainly a potential. And then again, more realistically would be to allocate or reduce other budget line items. Again, this just gives you, somebody says, well, I want another $100,000 for park expenses. Then, as we've always done before, and many of you have asked us during meetings, the first question that would be next is, okay, where are you funding it? And so this is kind of very broad, but again, not going to recommend any cash reserves. So the last slide does look at your cash reserves. And again, I've already told you the minimum amount for each of them. The airport's really in there just to give you a big picture. The airport is doing fine. Again, I think only a couple of you might remember, and I love telling this story because it's a success story. Many, many years ago, the airport had a cash reserve, a fund balance reserve of negative $330,000. And now, they've got about 550,000. I mean, that's a really nice change. And again, that's what happens when, very slowly. I mean, they did some timber. They looked at their rates, both fuel rates. They looked at their rental rates. Really did a great job of trying to balance, the difference between, selling, getting people interested and excited about the airport, as well as making sure they were covering costs and then building their reserves. So, and again, that's a lot of what we want to do with the utility fund and the general fund. We've got about $1.5 million between the two. And you can see, we've got, again, 100,000. We've got some contributions we're going to put in there to grow this. It's not going to happen overnight, but it has to be done. And again, I've talked about some of the reasons why. One of the things I didn't mention that I always like to remind everybody is, even with these grants, at the airport, if you got a grant of, you could have a grant of $5 million. A lot of that money has to be paid up front. Now, the airport manager recently has done a great job of trying to request those reimbursements first before we make the payment. But I think the point is that there is, timing that goes into that. And again, it's just another very small reason, but certainly a reason for making sure the reserves are in good shape. These numbers do not include any potential FEMA reimbursements. No idea what that's going to look like. There are some long-term loans that the general fund has, even the airport has. I don't include that in here. I mean, if the general fund owes the utility fund a couple $100,000, I don't put that full burden on this right now, because that money will I know the auditors do, but I don't. I try and give you more of a realistic what's there now. You will eventually have, and it's not included in here in the general fund. I just want a reminder to everyone, the rest of the fire vehicle refurbishment, if I got that right, will be spent in August. So somebody will be seeing that as a check to sign. And again, finally, it does not include any developer reimbursements. I know that there's some money coming in now, and there's some other bill backs. So I mentioned this as there's some upside. It doesn't really change our plan of action or our approach, but wanted to give everyone the full picture. And I promise that's my last slide. I know that's a lot. The first workshop is me generating a lot of numbers, giving you a ton to look at. Hopefully, then again, the rest of this workshop and any subsequent ones, certainly can go over any of these points, go over any new things you want to go over. Really, at this point, it's the pleasure of the council how we proceed. Other than to say, we have to address. Obviously, we talked, briefly about the dates. We have to address the millage rate. Other than that, it can be, go over any items you want.
I think we can go over dates right now. Get that taken care of.
Okay, so we go back to slide 3. Again, the 12th one is the September 12th is a little bit more set, only because I can't extend it because you have to have the your assessment roll locked in for them. That's new this year, obviously for the city versus what we've seen in prior years. The second one probably I put on the 26th. Probably makes more sense depending upon what the council will is. Maybe to you can't do it on the 23rd. By the way, because you can't have a meeting the same time as either the county or the school board. So that makes your dates a little bit, shrinks your dates, in other words, a little bit more. And I believe the 23rd, that's probably why I didn't put it on that Tuesday. 23rd is their final workshop. I used to try and get these really lined up with your Tuesdays. We would have the public hearing, half an hour before the council meeting started. As long as you have it after 5:01, you're okay. But like I said, the 23rd, the county kind of took up, and so certainly can have it any other day between, like 2 or 3 days after. Got to give maybe a week after the first public hearing to allow for advertisements and any changes you need. Other than that, you can kind of pick your date.
So, Stephen, you can't have it on the same day as the county commission, even if theirs is in the morning and ours is in the evening. Of course, theirs may be in the evening.
That's correct.
Sure. Just not on the same
I don't
day.
know. I think I thought that everyone had to have it after 5:01 to allow folks that